Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Meridian, watching the massive alien space station grow larger on the main screen. After 3 months of traveling through deep space, they had finally reached the edge of Zephyrian territory. This was humanity's first real chance to make friends with another intelligent species among the stars. The space station was huge, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. It looked like a giant metal flower with 8 arms reaching out from a central hub. Bright lights moved along its surface and smaller ships flew around it like busy insects. Jake had seen pictures from the long-range scouts, but seeing it with his own eyes was something else entirely. "Sir, we're getting a message from the station," said Ryan Walsh from his position at the communications desk. The young man looked nervous, which was understandable. Everyone on the ship knew how important this mission was for Earth's future. "Put it through, Ryan," Jake replied, straightening his dress uniform. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Carter adjusted her tablet computer, ready to take notes on everything the alien said. Commander Alex Turner stood at attention near the weapons console, though all weapons had been powered down as a sign of peace. The main screen flickered and showed the face of a Zephyrian. Jake had studied their appearance for months, but it was still strange to see one in person. The alien looked like a large lizard that could walk on 2 legs. Its skin was dark green with lighter patches, and its eyes were bright yellow with thin black slits down the middle. When it spoke, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. "Human vessel, you are permitted to dock at Landing Base 7. Your delegation will be escorted to meet with Emperor Vextal and the High Council. Do not deviate from the assigned path or attempt to access restricted areas." The transmission ended before Jake could respond. He looked at his team and shrugged. "Well, they're not much for small talk, are they?" Dr. Carter smiled slightly. "Remember, Captain, their culture values directness and efficiency. What seems rude to us might be normal politeness for them." 20 minutes later, Jake found himself walking through the alien station with his 3 companions. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly built for beings larger than humans. The walls were covered with strange symbols that glowed with soft blue light. Zephyrian guards walked beside them, carrying weapons that looked like they could cut through metal. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Jake couldn't see the top in the dim lighting. Hundreds of Zephyrians stood in organized rows, all facing a raised platform at the far end. On the platform sat Emperor Vextal on a throne made of black metal and glowing crystals. The Emperor was the largest Zephyrian Jake had ever seen, easily 8 feet tall even while sitting down. His scales were darker than the others, almost black, with gold markings across his forehead and arms. When he looked at the human delegation, his yellow eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. "So," the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the huge room, "these are the humans we have heard about, the new species that thinks it can travel among the stars." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly, the way the diplomatic training had taught him. "Your Imperial Majesty, I am Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations between our peoples." Several Zephyrians in the crowd made hissing sounds that Jake hoped were not signs of anger. Emperor Vextal raised one clawed hand and the room fell silent. "Peace," the Emperor repeated, as if the word tasted bad in his mouth. "And what does Earth offer the mighty Zephyrian Empire in return for our friendship?" Dr. Carter stepped forward with a small metal box. "We bring gifts from our world, Your Majesty, examples of our art, music, and scientific knowledge. We hope they will show you the beauty and creativity of human culture." She opened the box and activated a holographic projector. Images of Earth appeared in the air above the device. Mountain ranges, ocean waves, cities full of lights, and forests green with life. Music began to play, a piece by one of Earth's greatest composers that had moved people to tears for centuries. The Emperor watched for a few moments, then waved his hand dismissively. The hologram disappeared. "Pretty pictures and noise," he said. "Is this what humans think passes for strength?" Jake felt his heart sink, but he kept his voice steady. "Your Majesty, we believe that art and culture show the depth of a civilization. They represent our values of creativity, freedom, and individual expression." "Individual expression," Emperor Vextal repeated, and this time many Zephyrians in The room made that hissing sound. You speak of chaos and weakness. In the Empire, all serve the greater good. All obey the natural order. The strong rule, and the weak serve. Commander Turner shifted slightly behind Jake, but remained silent. This was not going the way any of them had hoped. We understand that our cultures are different, Jake said carefully. But we believe that different peoples can still work together for mutual benefit. Earth has resources and knowledge that might be valuable to the Empire. The Emperor stood, up from his throne, and Jake was surprised by how tall and intimidating he was. The alien ruler walked down the steps of the platform until he was standing just a few feet away from the human delegation. "Kneel," Emperor Vextal commanded. Jake felt every eye in the room watching him. He knew that in Zephyrian culture, kneeling was a sign of complete submission, not just respect. If he knelt now, Earth would be declaring itself a servant of the Empire. But if he refused, he might destroy any chance of peace between their species. "Your Majesty," Jake said quietly, I
cannot kneel.
I represent the free people of Earth, and we bow to no one. The silence in the room was complete. Jake could hear his own heartbeat and the quiet breathing of his companions. Emperor Vextal's eyes narrowed to thin slits, and his lips pulled back to show his sharp teeth. "Cannot kneel," the Emperor said slowly. "Or will not kneel." "Will not, Your Majesty. It is not our way." Emperor Vextal turned and walked back to his throne. When he sat down, he looked at the humans with something that might have been disgust. "You come to our domain in your tiny ship, bearing gifts of pictures and songs, speaking of freedom and individual expression. You refuse to show proper respect to your betters. And you think this makes you worthy to stand among the stars?" The Emperor raised his voice so that everyone in the room could hear him clearly. "The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We rule over 100 worlds and 50 different species. We have brought order and strength to this part of the galaxy. And now you soft meat creatures think you can be our equals?" Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the Emperor was not finished. "Return to your little blue world, humans. Tell your leaders that the mighty Zephyrian Empire offers you one chance to avoid destruction. Submit to our rule. Become a vassal state of the Empire. Accept Zephyrian governors on your worlds and follow our laws. You have 30 of your solar cycles to decide." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "Emperor," Vextal smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. "Then we will show you what happens to species who do not understand their place in the natural order. Your worlds will burn, your cities will fall, and your people will learn what it means to defy the Empire." The audience was over. Zephyrian guards surrounded the human delegation and escorted them back to their ship. As the Meridian pulled away from the station, Jake watched Zephyrian warships following them to the edge of their territory. "Send a message to Earth," he told Ryan. "Emergency priority. Tell them we may be looking at humanity's first interstellar war." 3 weeks after Captain Morrison's warning reached Earth, the Zephyrian Empire made good on their threat. Admiral Korath Vex, younger brother of Emperor Vextal, commanded a fleet of 200 warships as they approached humanity's outer colonies. The attack began at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time across 3 different star systems. On the mining colony of New Haven, Governor Paul Richards was having his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the command center and saw something that made his blood freeze. Dozens of alien ships were dropping out of hyperspace around the planet, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. "Get me Earth Command," Paul shouted to his communications officer. "Send a distress signal on all frequencies." The first plasma bolts hit New Haven's orbital defense platforms before anyone could respond. The platforms, built to protect against pirates and asteroids, exploded like firecrackers against the advanced Zephyrian weapons. Chunks of burning metal fell toward the planet's surface, lighting up the morning sky like falling stars. Paul watched helplessly as Zephyrian landing craft punched through the atmosphere. The colony had 50,000 people, mostly miners and their families. They had no military beyond a small security force with basic weapons. Against an invasion fleet, they might as well have been throwing rocks. "Sir, incoming transmission," From the alien fleet, the communications officer said, his voice shaking. Paul straightened his shoulders. Put it through. The face that appeared on the screen was that of Admiral Korath Vex. The Zephyrian's yellow eyes showed no emotion as he spoke. Governor Richards, I am Admiral Korath of the Imperial Fleet. Your colony will surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your settlement. We're just miners here, Paul said, trying to keep his voice steady. We have families, children. Surely we can work something out. You had 30 cycles to surrender, the Admiral replied. Your species chose defiance. Now you will serve as an example to others who might resist the Empire. The transmission ended. 5 minutes later, the first Zephyrian troops landed in the colony's main square. Paul ordered all security forces to stand down and went out to meet the invaders with his hands raised. He hoped that surrender would save some lives. It did not matter. The Zephyrians had not come to take prisoners. Meanwhile, on the agricultural world of Greenfield, farmer Danny Cooper was working in his wheat fields when he saw the alien ships overhead. Unlike Governor Richards, Danny had served in Earth's military before becoming a farmer. He knew what an invasion looked like. Martha, get the kids to the storm shelter, he called to his wife. Call the neighbors. Tell everyone to grab their hunting rifles and meet at the community center. Martha Cooper looked at her husband with frightened eyes. Danny, what's happening? War, he said simply. The aliens have come, just like Captain Morrison warned. Danny and 30 other farmers gathered at the community center with whatever weapons they could find. Most had hunting rifles for dealing with the local wildlife. A few had old military weapons left over from Earth's various conflicts. It was not much against an alien invasion force, but it was better than nothing. Zephyrian ground troops landed in the town square, expecting easy victory against primitive humans. They were surprised when rifle fire erupted from the surrounding buildings. Danny had positioned his neighbors in a rough circle around the landing zone, using the same tactics he had learned fighting rebels on Mars years before. 3 Zephyrian soldiers fell before they could reach cover. The aliens were tough, but bullets still hurt them. The problem was that the farmers only had so much ammunition, while the aliens seemed to have unlimited reinforcements. Danny, we can't hold them much longer, shouted his neighbor Pete from across the street. They've got some kind of energy shields now. Danny watched as more alien ships landed outside the town. Soon, there would be hundreds of them, but every minute his people held out gave the evacuation ships more time to escape with the women and children. Keep firing, he yelled back. Make every shot count. The battle lasted 3 hours. In the end, Danny Cooper and his brave farmers were overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology, but their sacrifice allowed transport ships to escape with 8,000 civilians. The survivors would carry word of the farmers' courage back to Earth. On the research station orbiting Kepler 442b, Dr. Susan Blake was recording her daily log when the Zephyrian fleet appeared on the sensors. The station was small, only 50 researchers studying the possibility of life on the planet below. They had no weapons and no way to escape. This is Dr. Susan Blake of the Kepler research station, she said into her recorder as enemy ships surrounded them. We are under attack by Zephyrian forces. The aliens are using plasma-based weapons and energy shielding technology far beyond our current capabilities. Their ships appear to be... The station shook as the first energy beams hit the outer hull. Emergency lights came on and Susan could hear her colleagues running through the corridors, trying to reach the escape pods. The plasma weapons cut through our hull plating like it was paper, Susan continued, still recording even as death approached. Their energy shields seem to deflect our scanner beams. If anyone receives this message, tell Earth that conventional weapons will not be enough. We need something else, something they won't expect. Another blast shook the station. Through her window, Susan could see pieces of the outer ring spinning away into space. She had maybe 2 minutes before the station's atmosphere was completely gone. Tell my daughter Jennifer that I love her, Susan said into the recorder. Tell her that her mother died trying to help humanity survive. And tell Earth Command that these aliens don't understand mercy. They're not interested in prisoners or surrender. They want to make examples of us. The final plasma bolt hit the station's central hub. Dr. Susan Blake and her research team died instantly, but her message pod ejected automatically and was later recovered by a passing cargo ship. Within hours, the news reached Earth. 3 colonies destroyed, 70,000 people dead, and the enemy fleet moving toward the inner worlds. In the emergency bunkers beneath Geneva, President Catherine Hayes watched the reports with growing horror. "How many ships do they have?" she asked General Patricia Stone. "Intelligence estimates at least 10,000 across their entire empire," the general replied. "We can field maybe 800, and that's if we strip every system of defense ships." Admiral Kevin Brooks stepped forward with a grim expression. "Madam President, our weapons barely scratched their shields in the few engagements we had. Their plasma cannons can destroy our heaviest cruisers with 3 shots. If they bring their full fleet against Earth..." He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood what he meant. President Hayes looked at the faces around the table. These were Earth's best military minds, and they all looked defeated before the real fighting had even begun. She thought about the brave farmers on Greenfield and the researchers who died trying to gather intelligence for humanity's survival. "What are our options?" she asked quietly. "Surrender," said Secretary of Defense Carl Martinez. "It's the only way to save lives. Maybe if we submit, now they'll treat our people better than they treated the colonists." "No," said a new voice from the back of the room. Dr. Frank Norton stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "There is another option, but you're not going to like it." President Hayes looked at the scientist she barely knew. Dr. Norton ran one of Earth's most classified research projects, something so secret that even she had only learned about it a week ago. "Tell me," she said. "The Omega Protocol," Dr. Norton replied. "We can show them that humans are not as helpless as they think. But if we go down that path, there's no turning back, and we'll have to live with the consequences forever." Outside, in the cold depths of space, Admiral Korath Vex was preparing his next message to Earth. Soon the soft humans would understand what happened to species that defied the Empire. Soon they would beg for the mercy they had been offered and rejected. The Admiral did not know that some creatures are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose. In the deep underground bunkers beneath Geneva, the most powerful people on Earth sat around a large metal table. The room was cold and sterile, lit by harsh white lights that made everyone look pale and tired. President Catherine Hayes had not slept in 3 days, and it showed on her face. Around the table sat generals, admirals, scientists, and politicians, all trying to find a way to save humanity from extinction. The reports from the destroyed colonies lay scattered across the table. Photos of burned cities, lists of the dead, and technical analysis of Zephyrian weapons. 70,000 people had died in the attacks, and intelligence suggested this was only the beginning. "Dr. Norton," President Hayes said, looking at the thin scientist sitting at the far end of the table, "you mentioned something called the Omega Protocol. I think it's time you explained exactly what that means." Frank Norton stood up slowly. He was a quiet man who usually worked in the shadows, running classified projects that most people never heard about. Today, he looked like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. 50 years ago, he began, we started working on a planetary defense system. The idea was to protect Earth from large asteroids or comets that might threaten all life on our planet. We called it Project Omega. General Patricia Stone leaned forward. "I've never heard of this project." "It was classified above your level," Norton replied. "Only 12 people in the government knew about it. We built the weapon in secret, using a hollowed-out asteroid in the outer solar system as our base." Admiral Kevin Brooks frowned. "What kind of weapon are we talking about, Doctor?" Norton walked to the wall screen and activated a presentation. Complex scientific diagrams appeared, showing particle physics equations that most people in the room could not understand. "Quantum vacuum decay," Norton said simply. "We learned how to create a small tear in the fabric of space itself. When activated, it creates a field of absolute destruction that expands at the speed of light. Anything it touches simply stops existing." The room fell silent. Secretary of Defense Carl Martinez was the first to speak. How big is this field? That depends on how long we let it run, Norton answered. In our computer simulations, we could destroy an area the size of a city, a planet, or even an entire star system. The field can be controlled and stopped, but only if we act quickly. President Hayes felt sick to her stomach. You built a weapon that could destroy star systems and you never told anyone? We hoped we would never need to use it, Norton said quietly. It was supposed to be insurance against extinction-level asteroid impacts. We never imagined we would face an alien invasion. Intelligence Officer Rachel Miller had been studying reports about Zephyrian society for weeks. She stood up and addressed the room. I've been analyzing their culture and military tactics. The Zephyrians only respect strength. Their entire empire is built on fear and overwhelming force. Every species they've conquered submitted after seeing demonstrations of Zephyrian power. What's your point? Asked General Stone. My point is that they will never negotiate with us as equals unless we prove we can hurt them, Rachel replied. Right now, they see us as weak creatures with primitive weapons. They attacked our colonies not just to kill people, but to show us how helpless we are. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been recalled from his diplomatic mission, spoke up from his chair near the door. The Emperor told me that humans don't understand our place in the natural order. He believes we're naturally inferior because we value freedom and individual rights instead of absolute obedience. So what do you suggest? President Hayes asked. Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the room. We give them one final warning. We tell them about the Omega weapon and give them a chance to withdraw their forces. If they refuse, we show them that humans can be just as dangerous as any empire. Secretary Martinez shook his head. That's insane. If we reveal our secret weapon, they'll know everything about our capabilities. They might find a way to defend against it. And if we don't reveal it, Morrison replied, they'll keep attacking our colonies until there's nothing left to defend. They've already made it clear that surrender means slavery, not peace. Dr. Norton pulled up another screen showing the Zephyrian fleet positions. According to our intelligence, they have about 5,000 ships massing near our solar system for a final attack. If the Omega weapon can destroy their entire fleet at once, it might convince the rest of their empire to leave us alone. Admiral Brooks studied the tactical display. It's a huge risk. If the weapon doesn't work, or if they find a way to stop it, we'll have revealed our only advantage. We're already at a huge disadvantage, General Stone pointed out. Our conventional weapons can barely scratch their shields. At least this way we have a chance. President Hayes looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Some looked hopeful, others looked terrified. All of them understood that they were making a decision that would affect the future of humanity. What would this warning message say? She asked Morrison. Morrison had been thinking about this for hours. We tell them the truth, that we developed the Omega weapon as a last resort against extinction, that we never wanted to use it against another intelligent species, but we also make it clear that we will use it if they don't stop their attacks. And if they ignore the warning? Martinez asked. Then we show them what happens when you push a peaceful species too far, Morrison replied. Rachel Miller nodded in agreement. The psychological impact will be enormous. No other species has ever successfully resisted the Zephyrian Empire. If we can destroy their invasion fleet, it will send a message to every conquered world in their territory. President Hayes closed her eyes and thought about the farmers on Greenfield who died defending their homes. She thought about Dr. Susan Blake, who spent her last moments recording information to help humanity survive. She thought about the children who would never grow up because the Zephyrians saw mercy as weakness. Dr. Norton, she said finally, how long would it take to prepare the weapon? 6 hours to complete the final preparations, Norton answered. Another 2 hours to charge the quantum field generators. And how long do we give them to respond to our warning? Captain Morrison looked at the star charts. 72 hours. That gives their fastest ships enough time to begin withdrawing from our territory if they choose to accept our terms. President Hayes stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the underground complex. Somewhere above them, Earth continued its daily rotation, unaware that its leaders were deciding whether to reveal humanity's most terrible secret. "Gentlemen, ladies," she said without turning around, "I want this message recorded and transmitted to the Zephyrian fleet within the hour. Captain Morrison, you'll deliver the warning personally. Make sure they understand that this is not a bluff." She turned back to face the room. "And Dr. Norton, begin preparations for the Omega Protocol. God help us all, but I think we're about to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of when we have no choice left." Outside, in the cold depths of space, the Zephyrian invasion fleet continued its approach toward Earth, confident that victory was within reach. Admiral Korath Vex had no idea that he was about to receive humanity's final warning. Aboard the massive Zephyrian flagship Sovereign's Wrath, Emperor Vextal stared at the strange transmission from Earth. The human president sat behind a simple wooden desk, looking tired but determined. Her words echoed through the ship's command center as the message played for the third time. "Emperor Vextal," President Hayes said from the screen, "humanity has developed a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. We call it the Omega Protocol. We built this weapon as protection against cosmic disasters, never intending to use it against other intelligent life. However, your attacks on our colonies have forced our hand. Withdraw your forces from human space within 72 hours, or we will demonstrate this weapon's power against your invasion fleet." The Emperor's yellow eyes narrowed as the message ended. Around him, his war council sat in silence. War Marshal Thylex, a scarred veteran of dozens of conquests, was the first to speak. "My lord, this is clearly a desperate bluff. The humans have shown no advanced technology. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are weak. They cannot possibly possess such a weapon." Intelligence Chief Korath shifted nervously in his seat. Unlike the others, he had been studying the strange energy readings their deep space monitors had detected coming from the human solar system. "My Emperor, there have been some unusual quantum fluctuations detected by our surveillance stations. Our scientists cannot explain them." Admiral Korath Vex, the Emperor's younger brother, slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Brother, we have conquered 50 species across 17 star systems. None of them ever had secret weapons that could threaten the Empire. The humans are lying to buy time." Emperor Vextal stood and walked to the massive viewing window that showed the Earth fleet in the distance. The human ships looked like tiny insects compared to his mighty warships. How could such a weak species threaten the Empire? "Korath," the Emperor said slowly, "show me these energy readings you mentioned." The intelligence chief activated a holographic display showing sensor data from the past week. Strange spikes of energy appeared on the charts, unlike anything in the Empire's databases of known weapons. "The readings come from an asteroid in the outer regions of their solar system," Korath explained. "Our long-range scans show it has been heavily modified with technology we do not recognize." War Marshal Thylex snorted with disgust. "So they have some kind of mining operation on an asteroid. That proves nothing." "Perhaps," Emperor Vextal said thoughtfully, "but I did not build this empire by ignoring potential threats. Korath, take a squadron and destroy one of their smaller outposts. Let us see if they will use this imaginary weapon to protect a few dozen lives." Admiral Korath smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Which target, my Emperor?" "The research station on their moon called Europa. It has only 30 humans. If they truly possess this ultimate weapon, surely they will use it to save those lives." 2 hours later, Admiral Korath's squadron approached Jupiter's icy moon. The small research facility sat on the surface like a metal mushroom, its lights visible even from space. Dr. Gary Phillips, the station commander, watched the approaching Zephyrian ships with growing fear. "Send a message to Earth," he told his communications officer. "Tell them we're under attack." The message reached Earth just as the first plasma bolts hit the research station. In the underground bunker, President Hayes watched the live feed from Europa's cameras. She could see the station's dome cracking under the alien weapons fire. "They're testing us," General Stone said grimly. "They want to see if we'll really use the Omega weapon to save 30 people." Dr. Norton stood at his control panel, his hands hovering over the activation switches. "Madam President, the weapon is ready. I can have the quantum field active in 60 seconds. President Hayes watched Dr. Phillips and his team trying desperately to reach their escape pods as the station began to break apart. These were good people, scientists who had dedicated their lives to expanding human knowledge. They deserved to be saved. But if she used the Omega weapon now, she would be proving to the Zephyrians that humanity possessed ultimate destructive power. The Empire would either surrender immediately or bring their entire fleet to crush Earth before the weapon could be used again. "No," she said quietly. "Not yet. We stick to the plan." On Europa, Dr. Phillips made it to an escape pod just as the station's main dome exploded. He and 3 other researchers ejected into space, but the Zephyrian ships tracked them down and destroyed the pods with precise weapons fire. The attack was broadcast live to Earth, showing the Empire's complete lack of mercy. Emperor Vextal received the report of Europa's destruction with satisfaction. No response from their ultimate weapon, he told his council. The humans were bluffing just as I suspected. But Intelligence Chief Karath looked worried. "My lord, our deep space monitors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout their solar system. Whatever they have hidden on that asteroid, it is becoming more active." "Irrelevant," War Marshal Thylex declared. "We have 5,000 ships ready to attack their homeworld. Even if they have some new weapon, they cannot possibly face our entire fleet." Admiral Koreth nodded in agreement. "Brother, let me finish this. One final assault on their Earth, and the human problem will be solved forever." Emperor Vextal thought about the human president's warning. 72 hours to withdraw or face destruction. It was exactly the kind of ultimatum he had given to dozens of other species before conquering them. The difference was that his ultimatums were backed by real power, while the humans had nothing but desperation. "Very well," he decided. "Begin the final attack. All ships, maximum weapons, no mercy. I want their planet burning within 6 hours." The massive Zephyrian fleet began moving toward Earth's inner solar system. 5,000 warships in perfect formation, carrying enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. On each ship, soldiers prepared for what they expected to be an easy victory. But on Earth, Dr. Norton was making the final preparations for the Omega Protocol. Deep inside a modified asteroid, quantum field generators hummed with barely contained energy. The weapon that could tear holes in space itself was almost ready. Captain Morrison sent one last message to Admiral Koreth as the alien fleet approached. "Admiral, this is Captain Jake Morrison. I met you during our diplomatic mission. Please, for the sake of both our species, turn your ships around. We do not want to use our weapon, but we will if you force us to." Admiral Koreth's reply was swift and cold. "Captain Morrison, your species had its chance to surrender. Now you will face the consequences of defying the Empire. In 6 hours, your Earth will be nothing but burning rock." The transmission ended. President Hayes looked around the bunker at her advisors and military leaders. Everyone knew that the next few hours would determine whether humanity survived or joined the list of species conquered by the Zephyrian Empire. "Dr. Norton," she said in a voice that barely shook, "activate the Omega Protocol. Show them what happens when you push humans too far." In the depths of space, the quantum weapon began to charge. Soon, the Zephyrian Empire would learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that appears weakest until the very end. The final battle began near Neptune as Earth's defense fleet met the advancing Zephyrian armada. Admiral Kevin Brooks commanded 800 human ships against 5,000 alien vessels. He knew his fleet could not win, but every minute they held the line gave Dr. Norton more time to prepare the Omega weapon. Commander Lisa Torres piloted her destroyer, the UES Defiant, straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Her ship's armor was already glowing red from plasma hits and half her crew was dead, but she refused to retreat. "All ships, this is Torres," she broadcast on the fleet channel. "We're not going to win this fight with weapons, but we can show these aliens what humans do when they're protecting their home." The Defiant's engines screamed as Torres pushed them beyond safe limits. She aimed her ship directly at a massive Zephyrian cruiser, intending to ram it at full speed. The alien ship tried to move away, but it was too slow. The collision destroyed both vessels in a brilliant explosion that lit up the dark space around Neptune. Across the battlefield, other human captains followed Taurus's example. They rammed their ships into enemy vessels, sacrificed themselves to take down alien fighters, and fought with a desperate courage that surprised the Zephyrian commanders. The humans were losing badly, but they were making the Empire pay for every mile of space. On the flagship Sovereign's Wrath, Emperor Vextal watched the battle with growing irritation. His forces were winning, but the humans were fighting harder than any species he had ever conquered. Usually, enemy fleets surrendered or fled when they realized they could not win. These humans just kept fighting. "Brother," Admiral Korath reported from the bridge, "we are detecting massive energy buildups throughout their solar system. Whatever weapon they claim to have, it appears to be charging." Emperor Vextal waved dismissively. "Impossible. No species has ever possessed technology superior to the Empire. Continue the attack." But Intelligence Chief Korath was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. The energy levels were unlike anything in their databases. Something very large and very dangerous was powering up in the asteroid belt. Deep inside the modified asteroid, Dr. Norton stood before a control panel covered with warning lights. The quantum field generators were ready, humming with enough contained energy to tear a hole in space itself. Around him, his team of scientists made final preparations for humanity's most desperate gamble. "Dr. Norton," President Hayes' voice came through the communication system, "Earth's defense fleet is almost gone. You need to activate the weapon now." Norton's hands trembled as he reached for the activation switch. Once he pressed it, there would be no going back. The weapon would either save humanity or destroy everything they were trying to protect. "Activating Omega Protocol," he said quietly. "May God forgive us all." The quantum field generator came online with a sound like reality tearing apart. A small sphere of absolute darkness appeared in the center of the asteroid facility, no bigger than a basketball. But Norton knew that this tiny sphere contained enough destructive power to consume star systems. "Field is stable," reported Dr. Helen Carter from her monitoring station. "Beginning controlled expansion." The dark sphere began to grow slowly at first, then faster. Everything it touched simply vanished, not destroyed but completely removed from existence. The asteroid facility's protective walls meant nothing to the expanding field of quantum vacuum decay. In space, the Zephyrian fleet suddenly detected the most terrifying energy signature they had ever seen. The small sphere of darkness was expanding at exactly the speed of light, consuming everything in its path. Asteroids, debris, and several Zephyrian scout ships that had wandered too close were simply erased from reality. "Retreat!" Admiral Korath screamed into his communication system. "All ships, emergency retreat, get away from that thing." But it was too late for the ships closest to the weapon. The expanding field of destruction caught 3 Zephyrian cruisers and 2 destroyers, removing them from existence so completely that there was not even wreckage left behind. Emperor Vextal stared at the tactical display in shocked silence. The impossible was happening before his eyes. These primitive humans had actually built a weapon that could destroy his entire fleet. "How?" he whispered. "How do they possess such technology?" Captain Morrison's voice suddenly filled the communication channels of every Zephyrian ship. His message was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every alien soldier heard his words. "Emperor Vextal, this is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. You are witnessing the Omega Protocol, a weapon we built to defend our world against cosmic disasters. We never wanted to use it against another intelligent species. But you have forced our hand." The quantum field continued expanding, now large enough to consume small moons. The remaining Zephyrian fleet fled in panic, their perfect formation broken by terror. "The field will reach your homeworld in exactly 72 hours, Morrison continued. "This gives you time to evacuate your people if you choose to continue this war. But if you want to save your empire, you will order an immediate ceasefire and begin peace negotiations." Emperor Vextal felt something he had never experienced before in his long life of conquest. Fear. Real, overwhelming fear of an enemy that possessed the power to destroy everything he had built. "Signal the fleet," he ordered in a shaking voice. Full retreat. Emergency withdrawal from human space. My lord, War Marshal Thylex asked in confusion. Surely we can find a way to counter their weapon. Look at your sensors, fool, the Emperor roared. That field of destruction is still expanding. In 3 days it will consume our entire homeworld unless they choose to stop it. We are not retreating. We are begging for mercy. Dr. Norton watched the quantum field on his monitors, now large enough to be seen from Earth with the naked eye. The weapon was working perfectly, but its very success terrified him. With a few more hours of expansion, it would become impossible to stop. Beginning field collapse sequence, he announced to his team. Everyone stand back. The dark sphere slowed its expansion, then began to shrink. The quantum vacuum decay field folded in on itself until it was just a tiny point of light, then vanished completely. The weapon was gone, but its message was clear to everyone who had witnessed its power. Within hours, representatives from dozens of alien civilizations were sending messages to Earth, requesting diplomatic meetings. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not the weak species they appeared to be. Emperor Vextel's surrender came 3 days later. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 50 species, formally requested peace negotiations with the humans they had dismissed as primitive creatures. President Hayes addressed the galaxy from the same simple desk where she had recorded humanity's final warning. The Omega weapon has been completely dismantled, she announced. We built it to defend our world, and we used it to save our species. But we take no joy in its power, and we pray we will never need such a weapon again. She paused, looking directly into the camera. However, let this serve as a warning to any who might threaten humanity in the future. We are a peaceful species, but we are not helpless. Push us too far, and you will discover that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that appears harmless until the very end. In the months that followed, Earth became the center of a new galactic alliance based on mutual respect rather than conquest. The Zephyrian Empire released all their conquered worlds and began the long process of learning to coexist with species they had once dominated. Captain Morrison was promoted to Admiral and became humanity's first ambassador to the galactic community. In his first speech to the new alliance, he said something that would be remembered for generations. The Empire struck first, believing we were weak. Earth gave one final warning, proving we were stronger than anyone imagined. But true strength is not the power to destroy. True strength is the wisdom to know when not to use that power. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, not just for their hidden weapons, but for their restraint in using them. The species that preferred peace had shown they could wage war better than anyone, and that made them the most trusted mediators in the galaxy. Earth's children would grow up in a universe where humanity was no longer seen as prey, but as the guardians who kept the peace between the stars.